Welcome to the Assessment for All Learners podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Goh. Here with me today is Mr. Tan Ken Jin, School Staff Developer at Bartley Secondary School. Ken Jin is our new co-member of the editorial board of the Assessment for All Learners Bulletin. Hi, Ken Jin.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
So Ken Jin, tell us about your journey as an educator in school and your experiences at MOE HQ that got you interested in assessment.
Sure. So actually, my journey as an educator started all the way in primary school when I had a really excellent P6 form teacher. She was firm, but at the same time very caring, and she showed me that it was possible to really impact lives, right? And when I went on to secondary school, I for some reason did well in science, and classmates started coming up to me to ask me for advice on how to solve things, and I even set test papers for them. So my assessment journey started all the way back then. So I knew I wanted to be a teacher, went on, became a teacher, and had a few stints in school, in HQ, in other ministries and agencies as well. The real turning point for me was in MOE HQ Planning Division. At that point in time, I was involved in a few projects, and one of them was the review of mother tongue languages. So we went on a trip to the US, and at that point in time, I had a deeper conversation with some of the thought leaders, so specifically Ms. Ho Ping, our DGE then, and I was sharing with her my interests, and she said, don't do educational leadership. We really need people to have more expertise in assessment. And so that kind of got the ball rolling for me. I never thought about it at that point in time. I had always been interested in character development. So I wondered whether I could potentially marry character development and assessment.
That's where you started to think about how assessment can support the character development of students?
Yeah, I suppose the question I had was not about whether it could or not, but how to, right? Because we spend quite a bit of time focusing on values education and character development of students. It's the co-curriculum. Since we're investing so much resource and time into it, we really should be asking ourselves, how do we ensure that we really are doing a good job? And so I think that was the main driver for me. How do we know that I, as a teacher, am really impacting the lives of my students outside of academic cognitive realm, but also in terms of student development, social emotional learning? And because I was really quite into student leadership at the point in time. So yeah, that was a question that really pushed me. So I went on to do my master's in educational assessment, right? And the good thing is I got an answer. The bad thing was that the answer is it's not so easy. As with a lot of things education related. It's not easy because you have to consider the values of the society, the context in which the educational assessment is being made, and who defines what is good character or not. So there are many, many things that tag along when you want to assess character development. It's not to say it's not possible. It just means that you have to really do a lot more research or speak to all the stakeholders and figure out what exactly are the core values that everyone believes in. And then from there, work out what it is that we wish to assess and how we're going to go about it. Yeah. I'm still interested in it. It's just not easy, and it involves a lot of conversation, particularly with stakeholders. Yes.
Could you share a little bit about the work that you have done in this area, in the context of your school, in assessing the character development of students?
When I first came back to Singapore after my master's, I was appointed HOD for CCE, which is awesome because that was my interest, right? And that was when the ECA was rolled out. So that's the Edusave Character Award. And the question we asked ourselves was, how do we properly assess character, right? How do we ensure that we really are giving this award that focuses on resilience and on good character to the most deserving students? Academics is quite easy. You get someone gets 75, you get 76, oh, you're better, right? But character is such a difficult one to assess. And so we came up with a process in which we allowed for as many people as possible to nominate whomever they wish to. But then we used our school values as well as the emphasis on resilience to really distill what were some of the key behavioral indicators that we wanted students to exhibit. Because we needed to ensure that there was good validity, we really spoke to as many stakeholders as possible to, number one, ensure the process was good, but number two, also ensure that the nominees really had different people speaking up for them.
Yeah.
So I think that was one direct application that I had. The other one that I saw, but I was not directly involved in, was when I was in curriculum policy office. I heard about what the character and citizenship education branch were doing in terms of ipsative assessment. So not so much about what everyone else is like, not worrying about the norm per se, but using yourself as a yardstick, as a measurement tool to see, okay, I was here, how would I rate myself now? And so basically just coming back to yourself and saying, okay, I don't care about how, I'm not that I don't care about other people, but more importantly, what's my growth as a person of good character? And I think that's great because it allows the person who's being assessed to have that conversation with him or herself as well, to reflect on exactly what is good character for me, right?
I see how the assessment of students' character for their development and ipsative assessment is really important for teachers to be aware, and how it is very aligned to this notion of every teacher being a CCE teacher. I see that's a great contribution that your work and the work of others have brought into the field assessment. So other than the assessment of character development, I also know that you have worked with the use of games and simulation for assessment. Can you
Yeah.
tell us more about this novel use of games and simulation?
When I was in planning division, we organized a retreat for senior management, and we wanted to make things fun and engaging, but at the same time have some real outcomes. And so the entire retreat we planned was all around games, right? And it made it really engaging. People forgot that they were there to do something serious. There were serious outcomes of it. But because everyone was so engaged in it, it got us thinking, how can we develop this further? And my DD had gone on to the Civil Service College, and there was a unit there called the CSC Applied Simulations and Training Laboratory. They saw that games and simulations were used for military training. Why couldn't they be used for policy making and in the public policy space? So that's how that kind of grew about. And it's tied very closely to the COPE's experiential learning cycle, where we have a concrete experience, you reflect on the experience, you think about what you could have done, and then you try again, right? You innovate and see how you could do things better. And in the same way, when we help players of games reflect on their experience, I mean, reflection and self-assessment is a very important part of assessment. At various points within the game experience or simulation experience, we would ask ORIT questions. So ORIT is objective, reflective, interpretive, and descriptive. Basically, the whole point was get them to observe, what are you doing right now? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? And then what are your feelings about it, right? Why are you feeling this way? Why are you upset, or why are you angry or anxious? And then get people to think deeper about the philosophy or the value systems that they bring into the game and the gamified experience. And then think about, okay, in future, what am I going to do about it? And it was great because it's tiring, by the way. This is a very tiring process because not only are you invested physically in the game, but the reflection process is very intensive. And so the games can last half a day to even a whole day. So people really go away from these workshops inspired, but also quite tired. One, they learn more about themselves and their teammates. But number two, the learning process was so deep and engaging that they remember it, and everyone always says, oh yeah, I met you during that game, right?
Mm.
So it's because of that experience that I'm now hoping in future to potentially, this is a dream of mine, I don't know when it's going to happen, but really set up an after school care center in the HDB rental blocks,
Mhm.
focusing on character development. So I don't intend to replicate what schools are doing in terms of having after school and enrichment. I think schools are doing a great job and the other partners are doing a great job already. I want to use board games or games to really help beneficiaries
Mm.
think about, okay, why am I getting angry when I make this move? Or why am I getting angry when the other person makes that move, right? It's a
Mm.
game. Why are we getting so upset? That kind of thing. I mean, that's just a scenario. But basically just to help them apply the skill of reflection, of
Mm.
perspective taking, and then reflecting back on themselves and realizing, oh, okay, how can I grow as a person and how can I contribute to society in that case?
What would you say about how your experience in your different school postings and HQ posting has shaped your philosophy and pedagogy in assessment?
I would say it has definitely given me more questions, right? I think this is a field that keeps on growing as we dig more and more into it. I don't think it's a secret that a lot of teachers, when we first got into education, at least back when I did, assessment was really just about tests and examinations and homework, right? Even though sometimes we didn't even really consider homework assessment, it was just part and parcel of the learning process. But over time, I remember one of my first innovative tests was a group-based test where students had to work as a team to answer questions, and then they had to run to a particular location to deposit their answer. Very early on, I already had ideas about how to innovate when it came to assessment, but I knew that that was not good assessment. I could tell that that was not good assessment because different people were doing different parts of the task. And I couldn't really assess whether, for example, team member A is in charge of running the answer over to the deposit box, right? I wasn't sure whether team member A actually knew how to answer the questions. So it just basically made me aware that there was more that could be done. And I think when I mentioned ipsative assessment earlier on, that was a real key change for me in terms of thinking about assessment, that I can use myself as a yardstick
Mm.
for measurement. I thought that that was something new that changed my way of thinking about assessment. Beyond that, I would just say I don't quite have a fixed philosophy and assessment at this point in time, mainly because it keeps growing. And I'm not ashamed of saying that, right? I think as we learn more about assessment, we apply it in our own teaching and learning, we realize that, yeah, actually, what works for which context. I think, like, for example, right now, there's a lot more conversations about students with special educational needs, for instance. And up until now, a lot of our modifications for assessment has really been access arrangements, right? Extra time or
Mm.
bigger font or perhaps even different colored paper, having a reader. They're great. They're fantastic. You've heard the adage about how, testing a go for how to climb trees and all that. It does make me wonder, okay, I think we're doing a great job. How could we be more equitable when it comes to assessment? I don't have an answer because I'm just about seeing more and more students with ASD, or whether it's ADHD or dyslexia. And so really making me think about what else could I be doing as an educator to help them in their assessment journey. Yeah.
Oh, these are very difficult issues with no easy answers.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So what would be some advice you would give to teachers who are at various stages of transitions in their assessment journey?
Oh, um, I believe in being humble, right? That's all part of the learning process. That's assessment for you, right? In action. So don't be worried about sharing what you know. Don't be worried about receiving feedback. Take it as a way of growing forward. We're doing this as a fraternity at the end of the day. I think that's important to learn, that we're not individual teachers, but we are a whole fraternity of teachers, and we're all in this together and really trying to ensure that we really do leave behind something good for the next generation. I think as much as we improve assessment as a whole, I think improving our self-assessment, and by that I mean reflection, is a very important part of the journey.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Ken Jin. I appreciate your perspective on feedback recipients and your stance towards reflective thinking in doing assessment work.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
And that's it for today's podcast. Thank you for listening.